Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My problem is the time.
Well, we can run over just a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I had prepared a presentation which was for about 20 minutes, and then I found out yesterday that I was supposed to be speaking about 10 or 12, decided I would not change my presentation, at least not the slides, but I'll go through them quickly with your permission. You will note that my title is not exactly the one that's written on the paper. I was asked to write the first chapter of the background paper, which, by the way, is in this memory stick which you have on your tables. The title will be more looking at what, in the past, has modern agriculture contributed, and I put human welfare because to signal very broad objectives. This is really what we are interested in. Good. Little technical problem. Okay, well, my purpose, as indicated, is to document past contribution of modern agriculture. And that's getting tricky. Maybe I'll change my mind as there's a change. What I have tried to do, yeah, maybe you click it, it will be easier. I will go quickly through some global indicators. I will not have much time to go into regional stories. I will recognize some negative unintended consequences of modern agriculture, as Bill just said, and I will conclude with an assessment. So looking at those global indicators, there are issues as to which variables and which measurements you want to do. I'm not going to go into those having no time, not enough time to look at it, but recognizing that indeed food security is not only food production, as was said earlier at the round table earlier, yet concentrating still on global food production, because in fact, when global food production is lacking, as we saw recently with the price hikes of 2008, the poor people suffer very badly. So those who are insecure have a keen interest in the global indicator. Okay, the key message I want to get out of this is that productivity growth has been critical in spite of unintended consequences. That's really the punchline of this first part. Let me put here, I summarized, put them, a lot of statistics, and this is just a little summary of everything. What we see over a 40 or 50-year period is a total a growth of total cereal production of 2.5% per year, which is faster than total population. That's the key point. And in developing countries, the growth has even been faster than in developed countries. Out of that, total cropland contribute only less than 0.3%, meaning that the rest is productivity. You can take total cereal production, that's only part of the food production. We have another indicator, total food production expressed in calories, and here we find a rate of growth of 2.2%. A concern is that, and very lively debate in the profession, average yields, particularly of cereals, have declined, seem to have declined. The rate of growth has declined. There is evidence, very good, you look at the reference in my paper. For wheat, it may have come down from 3% per year to less than, or to 0.5%, and from 2% to 1% for rice. But when looking at total factor productivity, that's what the economists use. It's total production divided by total input, not yield. Total production divided by acreage, which is only one input. Keith Fuglie, who is on the program later, will probably tell us, I don't know what he was going to tell us, but I read this paper, and that evidence is that, thank goodness, there is evidence that growth is accelerating. So the topic, the lessons we draw from the yields for cereals may not be as worrisome, even though there should be concern, and indeed, Bill is right, the task is daunting, the challenges are daunting, but yet there is cause for hope, if I may put it this way. Very quickly, we'll get through that. That growth of total yield of total cereals, Pat Westhoff gave me that graph, and here when you take absolute quantity and not rate of growth, you see a fairly constant rate of growth. So it depends on how you look at the record, really. Sometimes the glass is half full, sometimes it's half empty. This is food production in kilocalorie per hectare by region. Note that OECD in yellow, that's towards the top, has grown and used to be the highest rate, productivity per hectare. It has tapered off in OECD countries. But the blue line, Asia, continues to have accelerated, but tapering also in recent years, but less center. And last one I'm going to call your attention to is the black line at the bottom. Yeah, it's probably visible. It's Africa. It's very low, yet it's increasing. It has doubled, about the same rate of growth as OECD country, something which is not often understood. When discussing global issues as we are here, obviously we have to talk at the world level, but let's remember that there are huge differences in the world. That's the purpose of this slide. I'm going to just put them all on this. Several environmental indicators. I'm not going to read all of that. I'll let you have a look quickly. Obviously, the issue is whether or not this productivity growth established earlier is sustainable. And as Bill said, yes, there are very serious environmental problems. Some of them are unintended consequences of modern agriculture. For some of them, some the same, modern agriculture is part of the solution. And Bill illustrated that very well in his last slide, so I don't need to come back to that. But of course, this is a key point for the whole demonstration. So I went through the variables. One was my key message. And the third, the role of modern agriculture. Science and technology based, of course, there is a consensus here. Let me, the last two. Scale neutral. That is the point where you could detect a difference of view between what Bill just said about the difference between traditional and modern agriculture and what I'm going to say now. I don't believe there is a difference of view on that between the two of us. However, we don't stress the same thing. And what I want to stress is that if modern agriculture was restricted to large-scale agriculture, including non-corporate large-scale. I know this situation in the US, and we are very similar in Europe, particularly in France, where I come from. If we restricted modern agriculture to what I call large-scale agriculture, then it's not going to be part of the solution, or much less than what it is. In the regional stories, I review the case of China and India, particularly BT cotton in India. I also explore the situation or review the situation of the growth of production in the Cerrados of Brazil. Here you have three cases, in two of which, the first two, are clearly a modernization of agriculture, but consistent with small-scale agriculture. Whereas, as far as Brazil is concerned, there are also small farms, but it's essentially large farms. So my key point here, my key message is the challenge for modern agriculture is to contribute to the transformation of traditional agriculture, because there are billions of people, hundreds of millions, 2 billion probably, in the world of people who are not going to exit out of poverty through out-migration. Some of them will, that's one thing. Rural diversification. So the third exit strategy mentioned by the World Development Report on Agriculture 2 years ago, the World Bank 2 years ago. The third exit strategy is intensification of agriculture, and this is the role of modern agriculture. Okay, I think I gave you I am not going to go through the original stories. I am just listing them there. And let me just conclude by a few controversies. Why is it that we have so much problem? The first one, the first one is GMOs. And if you come from Europe, I can tell you it's a very controversial topic. The paradox here is that we have two camps. People don't listen to each other. And I am extremely pessimistic. For me, when I speak of it in Europe, I say we are in a state of paralysis. I happen to have been in India last month, precisely at the time when the government established a moratorium on BT brinjal, as they call it, eggplant. And you had in the debate in India exactly the same situation, the same two camps as we have in Europe, in spite of the tremendous success of BT cotton, which I had no time to discuss this afternoon, but it's a huge success, BT cotton in India. In spite of the success of BT cotton, there is a hang-up on brinjal. The next one is pesticides. Here the situation is somewhat similar. There are two camps also. However, in that case, in the case of pesticide, there has been over the years an international consensus which has developed. I saw several signs of that, in particular the consensus around IPM, Integrated Pest Management, and also the fact that several international organizations, FAO and the World Bank in particular, and I was in the World Bank, so I know I've been part of that, have established guidelines which express some degree of consensus. There are still controversies, but perhaps a little less. The last one is the role of small peasants, and this is the point I already made, namely that I see the challenge for modern agriculture of transforming traditional agriculture. Let me conclude, Mr. Chairman, and let's put them all on the table, on the graph, if you're willing. Thank you very much, Lisa. Clearly, in spite of these controversies, in spite of those debates, of the unintended consequences, there are very significant contributions in the past of modern agriculture in terms of diets, benefits to consumers, environmental enhancement. That's what I said earlier. Modern agriculture is both a source of environmental problems, but also part of the solution. We have talked here mainly of agriculture and even almost of crops exclusively, crop production. But clearly, one needs to have a global vision, a total value chain, a global agri-food system, and clearly there have been tremendous advancement in processing technology and handling. And finally, as was discussed earlier and as Bill mentioned, contribution to political stability should not be underrated. Thank you for your attention. Sorry for that.
Wow.